Well, welcome. Glad to see so many familiar faces and a lot of unfamiliar ones too, which is good news. First up, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Steve Tietzma, President of the Board of the Sustainable Business Forum. And we're at a very awesome venue today, the Grand Valley State University Seidman College of Business. And with that, I'd like to welcome the Dean of the Business School, Diana Lawson.
Good afternoon, everyone. How's lunch? Is it okay? Good. I didn't make it, so it's edible. I'm here just to welcome you to the L. Seidman Center and the Seidman College of Business. I came down a couple of minutes early to learn more about your organization, and I have to say that I'm really impressed that you are committed to getting together on a monthly basis to learn from each other, because sustainability is a really, really important area for growth for not just West Michigan, but for the entire country. And the best way to learn is to learn from others who are doing similar things. And the more people you put in a room together to come up with ideas and initiatives and learn what's working and more importantly, learn what's not working and how to make it work is really important. So I commend you all for taking the time to do this, because this is how organizations work together to build a really strong, sustainable economic, social, and economic and social community. So thank you for your commitment. I also want to thank, I want to say that Grand Valley is very committed to sustainability. In the business school, we have curriculum in sustainability for focusing on companies and what they can do to help develop and sustain more sustainable organizations from many different levels of sustainability. And in the paper yesterday, there was an article stating that the Board of Trustees just approved the solar farm out in Allendale, and that 7% of what is produced from the solar farm will be used by Grand Valley. That's an investment. That's a big money investment that shows the commitment of Grand Valley to sustainability. So we're right in there with you and want to work with all of you as much as we can. And I want to thank Norm for agreeing to host this here and getting us all involved. And he really is the person on the ground at Grand Valley who goes to everybody he can find on at Grand Valley to get them to think more about how they can incorporate sustainability into what they do. So have a great meeting today, and welcome.
Next on the item on the agenda is to welcome some of our new members. And if I say your name or your company and you're here and are representing them, please stand up and wave to everybody. First up is Steve Dahlquist, who I know I spoke with earlier. Steve. And also Terry Piersma, if Terry is here. Welcome, Terry. We'll be hearing a little bit more from the GR Bikes folks, but they are also new members. We have Pilot Malthouse. I don't know if anybody's here from there. No. And also OpEx Pros. Is there anybody in the audience? No. Well, with that in mind, and I have mentioned too, I see a lot of unfamiliar faces. If you have any interest in becoming a member, you could see myself or Dan Schoonmaker, the director of the forum, or any other board member. We would invite you to talk to one of us. With that said, membership fees are due, and receipts will be emailed to you within a few days. Next item of business is the Triple Bottom Line Bash. Mark your calendars for Thursday, November 5. I know that seems like a really long ways away, but summer is slipping very quickly. So put it on your calendar. I'm told the teaser is that you need to think Family Feud with a sustainability twist. So if that doesn't pique your interest, I don't know what does. The next meeting, the next forum lunch meeting will be held in September. It's going to be in Muskegon, and you may have seen on your tables, the speaker will be Rachel Schneider, who is the Director of Sustainability with Harley-Davidson. So interesting speaker coming to that one. She'll be coming over on the ferry to Milwaukee, from Milwaukee, which is pretty cool. With that, I know Zach Bartle wanted to give a word or two on a volunteer opportunity. Would you like to?
Hey everybody, Zach Bartel. You've probably seen me helping around the forum for the past year or so. I just wanted to give a quick announcement about an event that's coming up. And I'm working with GVSU. Norman Yumi over here have been helping me out a lot. And Fifth Third Ballpark to try and put on a reduced waste ball game. And so the goals are twofold, really. We're trying to incorporate more composting and hopefully to improve on the recycling. And on the other hand, the educational piece of it is important to us as well. Hopefully to set sort of a precedent for future sporting events in the Grand Rapids area. And I know at GVSU here, the football games have been zero waste, and so we're basing a lot of our ideas off of that as well. So it's going to be on August 19th, which is a Wednesday. The game's at 7 p.m. and there will be fireworks afterwards. The volunteers will primarily, well, we call ourselves waste ambassadors, I guess, and again, that's based off the GVSU football games, where we've got the different bins and we're sorting the material, but we really want people to use it correctly. And so when we were having an initial event like this, we want to give them support, encouragement, and kind of educate them as to what's going on and what goes where, so we can get things in the right bins. So that's a primary responsibility. There will be, as you can see, 2 different shifts, so 5:30 to 8 will be, some setup will be involved, and then 8 to 10:30, some of the takedown will be involved as well. And included for the volunteers will be free parking, an entry for a lawn seat, a food voucher, and a t-shirt. So there's information on all the tables. I realized when I got here, of course, that my email is incorrect. It's Gmail. Just to clarify, I think there's a little switch with the M and the A or something. But you can feel free to contact me with any questions. There's more information on the website, including some links to similar events that have been successful in the recent past here. So thank you very much.
And I'm told Patty Burkholz, Senator Burkholz, would like the floor to let us know on a mayoral debate upcoming. Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. The 22nd of July, mark your calendars, Michigan League of Conservation Voters, in coordination with Michigan Public Radio and with the Grand Rapids Press, we are sponsoring a mayoral debate. All of the mayoral candidates have said yes, they would join us. And it's going to be at the Grand Rapids Public Museum starting at 6:30. So we hope that you will put it on your calendars. We're asking people to RSVP on our websites, either Michigan League of Conservation Voters, Michigan Public Radio, or I believe GR Press has. I didn't get the final confirmation from them yet, but anyway, Michigan League of Conservation Voters does have an RSVP form. We're trying to get a count. The room holds 250 people, and we've been told that we can't have more than 250. We already have about 100 RSVPs. So we're hoping you all come out. Bring your questions, your concerns. Questions will be allowed from the audience, and then there will be some people there who will be asking questions from the organization. So please join us on the 22nd and have something to say about our next mayoral candidate for the city of Grand Rapids and for sustainability. Thank you.
I'm sure those are going to be tough shoes to fill with George Hartwell going out, so whoever comes up next needs to make that a focus. I'd like to introduce Chad Gunno with Aquinas College, who also has a brief announcement.
So thanks, Steve. So just a quick announcement. I think many of you were able to come out to Aquinas about 6 weeks ago when we had an Aquinas Economicology Forum. We're having another one. It's actually a week from today. So on the 20th, Mitch Tomashaw, who's a national leader in environmental studies education, will be at Aquinas College, and he'll be giving a lecture at 7:30 at night. So 7:30 a week from today. The title of the talk is Environmental Learning in the Anthropocene. So it's a talk where he's going to be giving his vision for how environmental studies will be changing, and particularly as we're moving beyond, obviously sustainable business, but even into environmental humanities in the future. So if you're interested in that, it's a public lecture. It's available at Aquinas College, and I did leave a few flyers on the table outside, or you can also just come up and chat with me at the end of the meeting today. Thanks.
You may have noticed while you ate the pictures of the golf outing, and for those of you who know Drew Sorensen, he had a pretty intense look on his face, and I'm hoping that was a good shot and not a bad one. We'd like to invite Rick Post to come up real quick to give us an update on the golf outing, which will be held this year, August, is it August 10th? August 10th, yeah.
I'll start while that's coming back up on the screen. My name is Rick Post. I'm with PADNAS. This says I'm the chair of the golf committee. I'll take that because it's a big responsibility. I want to make sure everyone here knows we're now looking at the 10th annual golf outing. It's one of our main fundraisers, and Dan gave me absolutely open forum here for the next 4 hours until we have enough people sign up. So I hope you're comfortable, and we'll bring the decaf coffee in a little bit. We currently have 25 golfers signed up. We have lots of room for up to 72 on the 18 holes there with 4 per hole. We could probably do a few more if we wanted to. Also, we have 7 sponsors. So I'm going to take just a second. I'm not going to say mark the date, remember this. What I'm going to say is culturally and socially, we're not supposed to take our phones out in meetings like this very often, right? I see a few of you kind of checking a little email under the table. Right now, I want you to take your phone out. And I will be standing here until I see at least half the phones out, because we're going to mark our calendars right now. So phones, please. Phones. For those of you who think I'm kidding, you don't know me well enough. So today is Monday. Monday's pretty much flying by. I would like everyone to please punch in a 15-minute section tomorrow to follow up on this golf outing here. You may golf. You obviously don't have to golf. We have lots of sponsorship opportunities available from as low as $250 up to our presenting $2,500. There's also lots of volunteer opportunities. So please reach out to Dan. On that, we have many people who don't golf every year but show up to support the cause. Last year we raised $6,000 for our scholarship, and we absolutely want to try to do that again. That fundraising is for up-and-coming sustainability citizens who are in college and are pursuing their way through the college credits, and we want to help support them, help fund some of their education as they pursue sustainability ideas and ideologies. So I didn't see enough phones, so I want to make sure that you know I'm standing here for a few more minutes and that you're typing in tomorrow. Please follow up with Dan. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Rick. Well, first up on the agenda to hear from is Jay Newick and David Bell from the newly formed GR Bikes. They're going to share their plans for this month's launch of the pilot phase of a bike share program in Grand Rapids. Looks like they brought a few demos with them as well, which I'm sure anybody can take a ride on.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Many of you know me as David Bell from Progressive Architecture and Engineering. That is true, it's not changing. I get to work there as an engineer passionate about sustainability, energy, social equity, all these things. Jay Newick has been a friend for a while here and came to me with an idea a couple months ago that I just couldn't shake off. So if you have an idea you can't say no to, you have to keep saying yes. And we've kept saying yes to things, and here we are. I'd like to introduce us as a team behind the newly formed GR Bikes. Jay also acts as the executive director of the Spoke Folks. It's a nonprofit bicycle organization here in town. I may let you speak more on that. What we wanted to do today is introduce something we're rolling out, we're pretty excited about, that dovetails into what I mentioned of my day job of sustainability and things, but my Saturday job now is mobility and how sustainability functions into that and making Grand Rapids a bit more vibrant place. So I'm going to turn it over to Jay to do more of the technical and some of the what, why stuff, and then there's going to be a lot of time for questions at the end. I'm sure there will be some.
So, my name is Jay. I'm the executive director of the Spoke Folks. We've really been focusing for the last 3 years on making sure that everyone can get on a bicycle as a mode of transportation, and making that something that's enjoyable, safe, and reliable. And so I've been talking with a lot of our, well, specifically with Bill Kirk, with DGRI, about where is our city going, what kind of plans do we have coming up, and how do we continue to grow and get as many people using bikes as a mode of transportation as possible. Through that, and I know GR Forward just made a formal recommendation for a citywide bike share. We came across an app out of Austin, Texas called Spokefly. So they've been doing peer-to-peer bike shares in Austin for the last 18 months. And while there's a lot of different app companies that are doing peer-to-peer models, this one was really unique in that it allowed a scalable model. So a lot of systems require a face-to-face interaction, and this didn't. And so it was something that we were really excited about. We got looking into a lot further and realized that this is something that really can work in Grand Rapids as far as a different form of a bike share that allows us to both have a much lower starting cost, which means that we as taxpayers have to put a lot less into it. This, in fact, is actually entirely a private enterprise, so we're not putting, as taxpayers, any money into this. And then it also has, because there's so little technology on the actual bikes, it's financially sustainable. So once it's up and running, it's not going to need any of our tax dollars to keep moving either. So the two bikes that you guys have in front of you here are the two bikes that we're going to be working with. We looked all over the country trying to find some good quality bikes that weren't going to be too clunky, but then on the operational side, we're going to be easy to maintain. The one's a step through, and then the other one is not. What we did is we actually had a great problem. We found a bike that we really liked, and then they didn't have enough in the country. So this is a pilot because we bought every bike that they owned in the U.S. So currently we have 63 of the bikes that are like this brown bike over here with the white wheels. Moving forward, we will, assuming that this pilot goes well, have an additional 320 bikes in the spring that are like this style over here with a step through like this white frame. So they're nice little simple machines, 8 speeds with a grip shift, easy to use, and on my end for the operational component, easy to maintain. So the app is, just pull up on any phone. It's great because it builds on the technology that we already all have in our phones and in our pockets. And when you want a bike, instead of how a lot of other bike share systems work, well, assuming you guys don't know, a lot of other bike share systems work off of a rack-driven system, and so you would go up to a rack, you would check out a bike using a credit card, pull it from that rack, ride it around the city to wherever you're needing to go, and then lock it back up into another rack, and then go to your destination. These are not going to have that type of technology. And so what they do is that they lock up wherever you lock up a regular bike rack. So the bike racks that we have right outside here, these could be locked up there. When you want to use the bike, you use the app to unlock the bike. It gives you a 4-digit combination lock that all the bikes are locked up with. You ride it to where you want to go. You lock it back up directly outside of your destination. You walk inside and you're done. It's really that easy. Rate-wise, it comes out to $1 plus 15 cents a minute, so there's just that flat fee as soon as you unlock the bike, and then you pay 15 cents a minute. So a 10-minute ride is $2.25, which we think is quite reasonable. So we're a couple weeks from launch yet. We've been working very hard for the last 2 months plus. So we've got a couple of prototypes as far as kind of the branding and marketing that'll be on it. Each bike will have all the bikes have a basket on the front. Each bike will have a number, so if there's 4 bikes all locked up in the same location and you're checking out bike 123, you'll be able to know which bike you need to go unlock so that you have the lock that corresponds to that bike. Additionally, on the front, it'll have the Spokefly branding pointing you to the app to download, and then it'll also have a little sign on the side of the baskets just for additional branding. And then on the inside, there's a little Spokefly riding guide, and it really gives you the same information that the Spokefly app already gives you about how to uncheck the bike, how to check the bike in. If you do want to have a good time with Instagram or Twitter or anything and use a hashtag, it reminds you to use that hashtag. And then we want to encourage people to be safe and smart. And so there's a little caution just that biking is an inherently dangerous activity and that you should ride being smart and safe. I think that's the pretty quick rundown.
That's the quick rundown on the technical side. Part of what gets me excited in driving this whole thing, Jay alluded to as well, in that this is a different model than what many other cities do. There are hundreds of bike share systems, and the rate of growth is exponential right now across the country and across the world. The way I've seen it described before of how we're different, when you look back, the first bike share systems out there still have the same goals that we do, getting people access to different mobility, getting people where they want to go faster, in a better way. The first systems out there were free range, throw some bikes out in the city, and they got predictable results, and they all disappeared. Doesn't take a rocket scientist, but that was the technology of the day. This is the late 60s. Further on, we start to get technology to say, okay, we've got to secure these things. Let's put on big racks at certain nodes around the city, and people know where they can go get a bike and know where they have to go return a bike. It's not a very smart system. You don't know, you can walk up to a rack and it's empty, and you just walked an extra 2 blocks to get there. It's a little bit clunky. More recently, over the last bunch of years, what has been happening is all those systems have become web-enabled, so you know what bikes are where to go. It all becomes smart. A lot of those bikes have high technology where everything is tracked over the networks, and you can imagine the cost goes way up for limited benefit. And as Jay mentioned, you've already got most of that right here. So we're building what we've called a 4th generation model of saying, we've got the technology, everything works, let's do it in a more streamlined fashion, built on the sharing economy. You know, if you've ever used Uber or some of the other systems out there, that's what we're doing for bikes. There's no driver you have to talk to here. You have to talk to yourself. But that frames the conversation for a lot of people as we talk about it, and sets people in the mindset of, we're not talking joyrides, we're talking mobility. Getting across town. This is a faster way to get between meetings than reparking a car, dealing with parking. Walking is sometimes too far. So this fills that gap in between. And the system is not designed for rich people in spandex. This is mobility. You know, we want to see this as an equitable solution where a lot of people don't have access to the same parking or access to cars. This fills a gap that our city needs to work on for vitality. With so much bike culture momentum happening right now, we're excited about where this takes us. One final note on a sustainability piece, as Jay polluted my mind with this idea and we got going, I did find a VCS methodology for identifying the carbon offsets for bike share programs. Based on data we see from other cities, it's not going to be worth our dollars to pursue offsets. But it's interesting that we can have a recognized methodology to account for the greenhouse gas reductions. So as Grand Rapids talks about having a 2030 district and really looking at transportation emissions, we have we can quantify what this is going to be. We can go on for quite a while, but I do want to be respectful of time and open it up to questions on stuff.
I love the idea of the app, confirming the bike is there, but how do you make sure that all the bikes don't end up here, so that instead of having them scattered out, that they're not just all ending up?
Yeah, how do we control where the bikes stop and start? Theoretically, in a perfect world, people start and stop rides, wherever you stop a ride, somebody else is going to want to start. It's not always going to work that way. We have invested in a mobile maintenance truck to go around to do routine maintenance, emergency maintenance on the bikes, but also to relocate. The joy of having a pilot program and a relatively small number of bikes for this season, before we pull them off the street in late fall, we're going to start seeing those patterns, and that data becomes valuable to know where stuff is, and we'll be able to relocate as needed. That's going to be part of daily operations then. Scott?
Well, David, what's your initial dispersion plan? For scattered
Good.
bikes around the city, or what?
Yes. The question is, where are we going to put them to start? Recognizing that we need a critical density of bikes to make it work. We're going to focus this pilot program on the core of downtown. Some bikes will go farther, and we'll bring them back. But we're going to start seeing those patterns. Eventually, by next spring's full launch, we'll have some of the kinks worked out. We'll have this information, and we're working on setting boundaries. Whether that's Leonard to Hall, here on the west side to incorporate GVSU, maybe as far as Easttown. We're kind of working on what that might be.
What do you think, an arena?
Yep, arena district. That'll be included.
What kind of mobility did you say was going to be used to distribute the bicycles back around and repair them? Is that a fossil fuel vehicle?
We've got an old bread truck. Yeah. We've got an old bread truck that we're going to be using. So yes, fossil fuels there, which would eat into the carbon offset. It would have to be factored in.
Are there going to be any helmets with the bikes?
Good question. Helmets with bikes. Ideally, yes, given the variation in rider head size, matched to bike size, matched to a helmet we can keep out in the weather, matched with hygiene. We're going to have to say, please wear a helmet. We're not providing one.
What about riding on the rapid, because the buses do take bikes? Will that be possible?
Yep, that'll be possible. The bikes are charged per minute, not per mile. So that factors in a little bit on the calculation of where it makes sense to do that.
If somebody were to decide that they want to continue to pay for the bike and put it on the Rapid, it's a normal bike in nearly every sense. So it's very possible to do that, because we would not discourage anyone from doing that.
What do the locks look like, and are they, does this combination change each time? Okay, so it's a set combination.
It's a set combination, but we do change them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not, if you walk up to, we've got the rack for bike 001 here right now. If you get bike 001 today, and then you see bike 001 next week on the street, it's not going to be the same. Okay. Yes.
When you download the app, is there the terms of agreement that has to be?
Yep. Maybe people didn't hear that in the back. When you download the app, is there a terms and conditions, essentially, duty to warn type language? Yes, that's part of the agreement. So we get your personal information, you get our terms for how it works, and everybody agrees, and you have a great ride.
From your one comment, you're not running the service year-round?
The question is, running year-round or not? No, based on weather here and how much the bikes would sit out in the winter versus how much would be ridden, it's just not worth it for us. So we have a warehouse space, we're going to keep the bikes in the wintertime. we don't have defined season yet. I assume early November, mid-November type thing, we'll take them off.
Because the app gives us information about how often people are making requests for rides, and that's really what allows us to be specific about where to even place them. We'll be able to use that information to determine when to pull them. So, I mean, we don't anticipate that people are going to be riding them year-round. If there remains to be a large number of people requesting and utilizing them, we'll leave them out there. And we don't expect that to be the reality, but as long as they continue to be used, we'll continue to have them be available.
Since we're not in the spandex, is the camp up provided or anything like that, or are they at camp up eating?
It does have a guard on there that's going to slow down any camp up eating. Actually, so with the additional ones that we're bringing in the spring, they have a full guard. This first pilot batch, there is a slight guard on there that reduces the chances of your pant getting caught into the chain. The ones that we're bringing in the spring, just the one on the right there, you can see it has a full guard that's really going to completely prevent it from happening at all.
So, okay, so I understand you get on your little cell phone and you sign up and you say, okay, I'm going to take the Bike 001.
Yep.
And you get your little code and you take it away. So how do you know when it's done? And how do you know when you got charged?
Sure. So when you're done with the ride, click end ride. It uses the location to tell me where that bike is now located at. It prompts you to take a picture of the bike to prove that you did actually leave the bike where you said you left it. And then it emails you a receipt. So, go ahead.
With that, if I'm a user, will it pull up a live map that will indicate where bikes are currently located, or at least, if not that, where they predominantly are located?
Yeah. It does bring up a live map of where all the bikes are currently located. When you click Ride Spokefly, it actually connects you and reserves the bike up to 30 minutes for you. And it connects you to the bike that fits you the best, that's closest to you. And then it gives you a map to say, hey, walk down this corner, down the street, around the corner. That's where the bike's going to be located at. At that point, once you say start ride, that's when it gives you that 4-digit combination to unlock the bike and when your time actually starts. So you're not charged for that 30 minutes of reservation, but it does have that built in.
What about the bike rack and where you drop it off, and what if you just lock it to a sign somewhere?
Well, that's one of the nice things about having a picture of where you locked it up. We're going to know that and be able to go move it. We're really trying to make sure people are going to lock it appropriately to bike racks. That's going to be a cultural thing. You're going to get the random people that lock it to somebody's front gate. We're building on this here, and we really hope people do see it as a community resource and something to work with and not try to mess up.
There's a list of my bike plus there on the app. Do people also put their own bikes into the system, or is that?
They can, because the app was originally built as a peer-to-peer model. It does allow anybody in Grand Rapids to also choose to make their bikes also for rent.
We're not going to maintain it.
Yeah.
But it's a good point. That's where the app originally came from. We're building it out as the first fleet in association with Spokefly. So we've helped Spokefly redevelop the app for this application to make it work. We've been in active communication with them. Are we done on time?
No, I actually have a question.
Okay.
We have about 4 minutes if you
Yeah, I was going to say.
See, Steve getting up too.
The other peer-to-peer networks like Uber and Airbnb had interesting responses from local municipalities or the other regulatory bodies, and kind of giving thought that your infrastructure is, as far as parking, you don't own any of that. Have you done any research as far as like how the city of Grand Rapids can respond to what you're doing here?
We've been in talks with both the city and downtown Grand Rapids Incorporated. With traditional bike share systems, that rack is still being put in a public space out in sidewalks. And they're building infrastructure that works just for their fleet of bikes. We fully recognize that we're going to be putting these bikes out in a public bike rack all across our city that we all pay for, and that could cause problems. We intend to continue to talk with the city as this deploys, and if we're overpacking public bike racks, we're going to be working with them to resolve that issue and make sure that there's more than enough infrastructure to support local cyclists and their system. But we've chosen to say that we'd much rather invest in existing infrastructure that supports all cyclists versus bringing in a separate infrastructure that supports just our system. Yeah.
Let's take one more. Yeah, last one.
We will be here afterwards, too, but just hang out a little bit.
Is there a way to reserve the bike? Like, let's say you ride a half hour to a meeting and you black out and then you get out of the meeting and there's no bike there.
Yep. That's where you can both reserve the bike up to 30 minutes. So you can be sitting in your meeting, you're like, I'm going to need a bike in a couple minutes, put the ride spoke flying out, and then you've got 30 minutes to get to that bike. On the other side of that, that's where we operationally need to have enough density so that even if you rode one bike there and that bike's no longer there, you can have assurance that there's going to be something close by that you can then use to get back to wherever you came from.
So a closing note, other than we'll be here for more questions later. We're looking at this as a pilot for 2015. Jay mentioned we've got a whole bunch more bikes coming for 2016. So please, use it, give us feedback. We want to make this something for Grand Rapids that the rest of the world hasn't seen yet. We're building something that is different, enabled by the technology that's out there today that wasn't in most of the systems that you've ridden were created. So please help us by providing that feedback, do some rides, let us know.
Yeah, thank you, David. I think we all wish you the best of luck and hope to hear a positive update in the near future, if you'd be willing to come back. With that, I'd like to introduce Steve Heacock as Senior Vice President of Public Affairs at Spectrum Health, a not-for-profit integrated health system based in West Michigan. At Spectrum Health, Steve provides executive leadership for system marketing and communications, public relations, community relations, governmental affairs, and research. He also is the Chief Innovation Officer for Spectrum Health, and serves as a president of Spectrum Health Innovations, LLC, a wholly owned subsidiary of Spectrum Health, which produces products and services to improve patient experiences and outcomes. Steve has previously served as Chief Administrative Officer and General Counsel for Van Andel Institute, and Chief Legal Officer and Chief Financial Officer at IdeaSphere, Inc., both Grand Rapids-based companies. Steve?
Good afternoon. Absolutely delighted to be here. Do me a favor and jot down your burning question about Spectrum Health, because I would very much like to make this interactive instead of just a talk. Although I have a very good talk that will take a couple hours to go through, and I'm delighted to have had the help of Sarah Chartier, helped out from Spectrum Health, and Elizabeth Burnson, who are here with me. But let me get some notion of what how you're all connected to Spectrum Health, because I'm making a bet with myself that everybody here has some connection. So how many people are employed by Spectrum Health? Yeah, I normally bring 30 or 40 people so they can clap loudly when I speak. But, how many people are Priority Health members? Excellent. How many people either directly or through family or close friend have been treated either at Spectrum Health Hospital or by a Spectrum Health medical group provider? Right. Did I miss anybody? How many people are vendors to Spectrum Health? Sell goods, services, otherwise. Did I miss anybody? Yeah, we pretty much covered it. And I guess that's what you'd expect, because part of a community, part of a strong community is strong health care. And ideally, it's strong health care that has a local base. and a local sense. Not everybody can do that, and as healthcare mergers occur and things happen within the country and as pressures mount, in fact, that's getting to be less and less true. But in this community, we do have Spectrum Health, and it is a very large and very substantial organization, obviously, as you all know, because you've been there. I got into healthcare for a very personal reason, and actually Alex DeYonker lived through it with me. I had a daughter that was sick. She had leukemia and was diagnosed when she was 4. And I found that sort of the nature of that care and what it meant in our lives. The disruption, obviously, to work, but to personal life too, and how it meant that you relied more on friends, you relied more on family, you relied more on coworkers than you might. That astoundingly important work that Dr. Fauner and the other physicians and the nurses and the staff were doing, and how it impacted our lives, and not just today, not just that day, but would impact our lives the rest of our life, and was an incredibly important thing in our lives. Changed my career. I was doing mostly M&A and tax work at Warner Norcross and Judd, and moved into doing healthcare work, and then ended up in healthcare for that reason. Both my daughters, Kirsten died when she was 10. Both of my surviving daughters are in healthcare. One's a nurse today, in fact, now a Grand Valley student studying to be a nurse practitioner. The other a PA, and you'd go, gee, they had this experience in their lives that turned out to be very negative. You know, wouldn't that push you away from healthcare? And in fact, it pushed them toward it, because there's nothing that's more kind of personal and engaging with people. Nothing where you can gain the loyalty and have this warm, beautiful relationship than healthcare with people. There's also nothing that can make people more upset and more concerned, because it's so important in their lives. And so I want to kind of frame for you some of what Spectrum Health does and what we're thinking and where we're going. But I really mean it when I say, raise your hand when I'm in this, if I trigger something, and interrupt me, because frankly, I'd rather talk with you than at you. So my objectives today really are to provide a better understanding of who we are at Spectrum Health, how we're focused on our mission to improve the health of the community, our community impact beyond healthcare, because it is substantial, and we do have a very large footprint in every sense of the word. And then also sort of looking at what is our social responsibility and how do we take that seriously. And I'd love to have you challenge me on that and give me new ideas on how to take that seriously. So what is Spectrum Health? It is a health system. It's not a hospital. I always get a kick out of how the newspaper still wants to put, you know, Spectrum Health and St. Mary's and Metro all lined up as if they're the same thing. And they're not. Spectrum Health and Trinity and CHS are very much the same thing. Because Spectrum Health is a system of a dozen hospitals, the latest being Pennock Hospital in Hastings. So we go from Ludington to Zeeland. We have facilities soon in Ionia and work that far, and then also on the lake shore. And mean to have that West Michigan footprint with Priority Health, a health plan with, I think, nearly at this point 650,000 members. We extend statewide, particularly in the governmental programs in Medicaid and Medicare, because frankly, that's what's required to participate in those programs. We have a medical group that's very substantial. The medical group includes some 1,300 providers and physicians and physician assistants, nurse practitioners, those kind of folks. This group went from, we had about 50 employed docs maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and now have 1,300. It's been a huge transition. That's still, we're basically in step 1 of the transition. There's a lot coming. And the reason we did that is because of the changes in healthcare. In fact, the Affordable Care Act in particular, although it's been a trend for a while, pushes people toward more integrated care. The fact is, if we end up being reimbursed not for procedures, but instead for value provided, you need that integration so that providers work together. It's not siloed cancer treatment and digestive disease treatment, because frankly, when you present thinking you might be having a heart attack, it might be digestive disease. And so we want a system where all those folks work closely together and work as one unit. We're frankly not there yet and a long way from it, but we've taken those first steps toward that effort. We've been recognized, and you see all this stuff, and we put it on billboards and talk about it. But it's pretty exciting, some of this. The U.S. News is a good example. My friend Jim Fauner, who is a pediatric hematologist-oncologist. Jim came here 25 years ago and started the program after a fellowship at the University of Michigan. And within 4 or 5 years, Jim was seeing more kids than they were at U of M. He's now more highly ranked than they are at U of M in his program. It's very exciting, and it's a top 50 program in the country. And you know, we sometimes have an inferiority complex in Grand Rapids where we think we're not quite big enough to do some things, so we're not going, you know, we think we're going past where we belong. We talk about playing above our weight class. Well, this is one of those areas where, in fact, we are top 50 in a number of things. We were rated the top 15, one of the top 15 systems in the country, and in fact, for systems our size, one of the top 5. Phenomenal when you think about the size of our area as compared to the size of the areas that those other systems are in, and very exciting. Obviously, you don't work for these kind of recognitions, but they're important, and they do show kind of who you are, where you are in the world. We did receive this environmental excellence notation too, which I know is of most strongest concern to you. We are mission focused. You almost have to be if you're in healthcare. Our mission is about people, is about improving the health of the community. Frankly, if you took 100 systems and look at their mission statement, it looks pretty much like that, because healthcare is about improving the health of the community. Right? You know, and you could be creative and try to be different, but you end up in the same place. And we mean it, but mean to be better in the future than we've been in the past, and are working toward that goal. And some of that is our ability to do that through Priority Health. A hospital system works mostly with sick people, obviously. A health plan, on the other hand, works mostly with well people. And so through the health plan, we're able to access that population of well people for wellness initiatives, for people to, in fact, improve their health and not need the hospital at the end of the day. It changes our thinking, too. If you compare our thinking to many hospitals, hospitals are you want to fill your beds. You sustain the organization, you stay viable by filling your beds, because obviously they have a huge fixed cost. And if they're not used, you're not creating revenue related to that expense. With us, because of Priority Health, we want to get people out of our beds. We want to keep them well, so that in fact they can sustain their lives without that care within the hospital. It really does change your whole focus when you start looking at it through the consumer, the patient, the member's eyes, rather than the hospital's. The other thing that is important to me, and part of it is the nature of the assignment I have, but the whole community relations piece, our impact on the community beyond healthcare matters a great deal to me and to the system. And you start thinking about, in fact, where that happens and why that occurs. Some of it is the community benefit, and community benefit is a term of art that the IRS requires us to justify in the 990. Senator, I forget who it was, but there's been an effort in Congress to look carefully at, do nonprofits deserve their nonprofit status? Does it make sense? And community benefit is something we have to report on the Form 990 to show, in fact, that there's work even beyond healthcare. So for Spectrum Health, it was almost $300 million last year. Much of that is the underpayment for Medicaid and Medicare. As you'll recall, as you probably know, Medicare and Medicare don't pay full cost. And in fact, that has to be made up by the system in other ways. But it also includes things like our community partnership programs. When the merger of Butterworth and Blodgett occurred some 18 years ago, I think at this point, 15 years ago, I don't recall. 19 years ago? 19 years ago, all right, yeah. I'm getting old is what's happening. But when that occurred, part of the deal with the judge was we'll sign a consent decree that says not only will we do a number of other things, but we will do community programs for the underserved at a level of $6 million a year. Just to give you perspective, I was looking it up just a little while ago to see how that compared. Mayo Clinic, for example, has a $3 million commitment that it's made to its community, but it's not permanent. They do it on a year-to-year basis on what they might do, and ours, in fact, is not just 6. It was 6.7 last year because of some additional grants and things that we were able to achieve. And so what do we do with that money? The Strong Beginnings program is part of that. I'll talk in detail about some of it in a little bit. But it's a program that a year before birth and a year after, we're engaged with young women within the communities of poverty, frankly, within this community to help them so that the birth weights are higher, the chance of success for those babies is better. And the results have been spectacular. One of the shameful notations of this community is that the black infant mortality rate here is very, very high. We've actually impacted those numbers as we go through this program. And by the way, the secret, probably any of you could have told us this, but it took us a while to kind of lumber into it. But the secret was to employ some of the people that have been through the program to go back into the community and be the representatives. Because when somebody from the outside drove up in a big car and parked, it had less impact than, frankly, if somebody from the neighborhood could sit with the other women within the neighborhood and talk about what their situation was. Tremendous impact. It's been very exciting. It's also where we do the school nurse program and a number of other things like that. We support health clinics for the underserved. That cost us about $4 million. We have a research agenda that's about a $4 million item too. We do some sponsorships of other organizations, but frankly it's limited, mainly because we collect money in charity. We take donations. We are a charity. To then take that money and pass it on to somebody else is difficult and not frankly right. It's not why it was given to us. But we do some sponsorships and try to show up at events and have tables and those kind of things. And we do that to the tune of about $1.3 million. Bad debts for the uninsured has all but disappeared, but it was about $46 million last year. The expansion of Medicaid, though, has dropped that to about a 1%, 1.5% number. It used to ride at 6 or 7%. So again, another very positive impact of the Affordable Care Act and our governor's really political courage, I guess, in getting it passed in this state, because he's still taking heat for it and will continue to, I think. Community engagement, we're significantly involved in a lot of places, and some of the things are really cool that you probably don't know about, so I'll tell you about them. Doctor's Day at the Children's Museum is an example. So we'll bring in a bunch of our physicians. We bought a bunch of little doctor's jackets with Helen DeVos Children's Hospital on their thing, and we engage with the children there to talk about what it means to be a doctor at a very young age. We do that sort of through all the ages in different populations. We do something with the Kent Intermediate School District also to encourage people to go into science and to go into healthcare and think about those careers. We do a partnership with Life EMS with Mark Meyer's group to teach students to become ambulance drivers within the Grand Rapids Public Schools, and they actually graduate out of that program and are able to walk right out into a job. It's been tremendously successful. We do work with the Urban League and trying to train people that otherwise have been unemployable or for some reason have found barriers to their employment and try to get them up to speed. It's together with the community college and the Urban League to try to get them ready for jobs in healthcare. The thing we're trying to do different in that program, we haven't succeeded yet, but we're about to. The thing we're trying to do differently is that we're trying to guarantee a job, do the vetting up front. So work with these folks to say, okay, we've worked through all the things that are necessary for us to be able to employ you. Now, if you do these 3 things, get this technical training, understand these issues, go through this training, you'll have a job. And that's very different than a lot of job training programs where people try and go through these programs, and it gets very frustrating because they get to the end and there's no job. So we're pretty excited about that. We did another example, and these are just examples of, frankly, 50, 60 programs that we're involved in. There was a Helping the Homeless program in Big Rapids where we actually brought in the homeless population from that county to make certain they had a primary care engagement there, and we treated some 100 people that day and tried to get them what they needed to treat chronic illnesses, tried to get them the help they needed to overcome the struggles they were having. And a very successful program I'd love to see us carry to other communities as well. A couple you probably know about. We were involved, of course, in the Michigan Street Corridor project, led by Suzanne Schultz at the City of Grand Rapids. Great project looking at that corridor of the medical mile to say, gee, what do we do to make it more livable, and where are people going to live, and what does happen there? Unfortunately, much of that building was done without any thought to walkability or any of the things that we now sort of take for granted. And some changes are coming. What we're hoping we can do, frankly, what Rick Breon wanted to do, and it wasn't accepted by the group, was to create a campus, to actually block it off so that it was a walkable campus and then divert the traffic elsewhere, but very difficult with Michigan Avenue. But we are working on getting rid of a lane or two of traffic and creating a boulevard. So it'll be much easier to walk across, much safer. It'll slow traffic down too, of course, as you all know, because in the 50s when we widened all the roads, what we did is speeded up traffic and made it more dangerous and less accessible to bikes and walking. And so we're going to try to squeeze it and do the opposite, and still obviously provide access to the emergency rooms and things you need to do. What's interesting for those of us from Grand Rapids is that we view ourselves as sort of a small town, but when you talk to people, I was up in Muskegon at their Chamber of Commerce talking to a group, and it was going to Grand Rapids for healthcare was a big deal, and you were going to the big city, and it was hard to know what building to go to and where to park and how to get around, and it was intimidating. And one of the tools they were using for their local healthcare system was stay here in the small town rather than having to go to the big city in Grand Rapids, because it's more accessible. I know we all giggle, right? But it really is true when you have that perspective. I grew up in Gaylord, so this is all big city to me. But we're doing some things to try to improve that, and are excited about that. I was fascinated by the discussion about the bikes, and very excited about them coming and pulling this off and making this work. We sponsored a talk for Manuel Pastor. Some of you may have come to at Wealthy Street Theater, maybe a year and a half ago. He's an economist that talks about sort of the economics of equity. And it's a fascinating guy, wonderful speaker, but he just goes through the numbers and basically says we have to pay attention to different things, not because it's good to do or we want to, but because the numbers are making us do that. We have to pay attention. Well, he gives this great talk. There's the Wealthy Street Theater is full. I don't know what that seats, 300-400 people. We leave and there are 40 people getting on bikes outside, riding their bikes home from that effort in the dark in Grand Rapids. And so for my friends and co-workers who think this is something in Portland, Oregon, and that doesn't exist here, obviously it's here now, as you all know, and something very important to this community. So we mean to embrace that. This is another example of our community engagement. We do have the Betty Ford breast care services at Spectrum Health. Betty Ford, while she was alive, obviously gave us the right to use that name, and we're very excited to have that. She was a pioneer in breast cancer, was the first really to talk about it publicly, and when her husband, then the president, talked about it at some United Nations forum and came to tears when he was talking about his wife's breast cancer, it had a profound impact on how people feel about themselves and how people are treated. So we love that connection. Well, we've started to use it in a very positive way for the community. And we now do these gatherings, these candid conversations, and look forward in October. The first one, it was just after Angelina Jolie had the double mastectomy because of the genetic testing. And so, a lot of women in Grand Rapids are going, well, what about me? And what does that mean to me? And do I need the test? And if I have the gene, what do I need to do? So we did a gathering where we had geneticists, we had the oncologist, we had the experts talk about it, and they hit exactly the right place. They didn't, it wasn't so technical that people glazed over, but it was technical enough to matter and to be important. We then walked across the street to the Ford Museum, and 2,000 people, mostly women and their kids, had pink umbrellas and raised them to create this image of the pink ribbon that went national. And in fact, we had press from Alaska to Florida on this because people were so interested in it. The other reason it was press-worthy is Susan Ford Bales had released the results of her own genetic testing at that event and talked about what that meant to her. Well, we followed up the next year with this event. Amy Roback is a Good Morning America hostess, and Amy they did something to encourage the testing for breast cancer, and they actually did it on camera. They had her tested there. And had a mammography there on site, obviously clothed, covered, but found out she had breast cancer from that very public event, and she came and talked to this group about, okay, what does it mean in early prevention and how to go forward with things. So because of our size, because of the talent we have, the experts we have on staff, we can do these things, and we mean to do them and are doing more of them. And it's been very exciting, frankly, as we move forward in those efforts. The other, I mentioned education briefly and talked about some of the things we do. There are some very specific things we do with respect to veterans, too. We did a Veterans Explorer program where we had veterans come in and do basically an internship, a paid internship, to figure out if there was a place within healthcare they could be employed. And we've had a phenomenal success with that. It's been an 86% placement rate with people that were frustrated because they'd come back after serving their country and were struggling to find work. We're looking at that as a model for other programs. And I keep talking about employment in part because our biggest footprint, frankly, beyond taking care of all of us, are the 23,000 employees we now have. Again, 23,000 employees right here. And when I stand, I was honored to give a TEDx talk at DeVos Hall, and I'm standing there addressing our people who are directors and above. So these are very, very good jobs. 1,500 people in that room. And those are 1,500 jobs that wouldn't be here if we were part of another system. They're here because Spectrum Health is located here and is our local healthcare system. And it's very exciting to me that that's true. I kind of chuckle when, Rick Breon's salary is printed in the newspaper and people get upset. And the truth is, every one of the systems is paying somebody that amount of money. It's just that he happens to be local and spending that money here, which I view as a good thing. But we do a lot of things, including one that's near and dear to my heart. Project Search, we're working with Hope Network and giving some opportunities for people with disabilities, developmental disabilities, to work within the system, because obviously there are those opportunities. So it's very exciting. And this stuff we do organization-wide too. There's things in Reed City, there are things up in Greenville, we do at United Memorial. They have a program that's called a mini medical school, and they bring in 250 kids and kind of go through, here's what it would mean, and here's how it goes. And again, the idea is to try to be inspirational. It's also done at the individual level. We have this astoundingly talented guy that, if you haven't gotten to know him, you will sometime. His name's Dr. Jason Slaku, and Jason is this phenomenal guy that happens to be African American, but he's a thoracic surgeon. He wants to be a model. He wants to walk into rooms where kids can look at him and go, okay, I can do that because this guy can do that. And he's taken that personally, even though he's incredibly busy and demands on his time are substantial, but he still wants to spend time with individual kids to model what he's done in his life. And it's very exciting. We're watching that happen. We do, so other employee engagement, I mean, we do the Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service. We had more than 100 people there. When we did the transplant games, we had 300 volunteers. When we do Jump Jam, which I'll talk about in a second, we had 125 volunteers. When you have that body of employees, that's something we can get to, and they tend to be people that care about other people, or they wouldn't be in healthcare. You think 80% of our employment are people that are nurses or nurse aides. So, that's sort of the nature of the organization. Very exciting. We do well with United Way. We raised nearly $700,000 last year and hope to do better this year, particularly because I'm chairing the campaign. So I'm hopeful we do better. Something you're particularly interested in, we do offer free rides on the Rapid for our employees. Not as many as I would hope use it, although maybe 300 a month, I think, do. And that's 300 a month that aren't then driving otherwise. Yeah, there you go, exactly. And I'm very anxious to get into the bike up on the hill and to figure all that out. We should not be building any building without that capability, because again, it's good. It's good for the community. It's good for the environment. But frankly, we better do it, whether we want to or not, because traffic, parking, those kind of things, we are starting to become a big city in that regard. So have that need. And you can imagine moving 23,000 people every day to work and back is a substantial chore. And many of those are right on the hill. I mean, I don't know, what would you guess, 15,000? Yeah, 15,000 of those are on the hill. We keep talking about how to get people from the hill to other parts of the city. The gentleman that owned Bar Devani kept saying, is there a way you can get them to the arena, the arena district to have lunch or something to help support that effort? And there are ways, and we'll get there, but there are inherent problems. I mean, one is that in healthcare, most people's lunchtime is 15 or 20 minutes, and they're grabbing it between patient visits or other responsibilities they have. So we do need to provide that on site, and I'll talk about our food service in a second. But the other one is patients, don't want to move around a lot for the most part. I was delighted that we got rid of the Burger King across the street, but we'll see what happens next there. But there is potential there, it seems to me, for our integration with the community. When Rick DeVos started talking about gondolas around our city, I got hopeful that maybe there'd be a way to get back and forth. Is somebody going to yell at me when I'm close to time? You're going to wave at me? Is that right? All right. So Jump Jam I mentioned briefly. We partnered with the Grand Rapids Public Schools to put on. We're concerned about children's obesity. It's shocking, frankly, what the numbers are and the number of kids we see. We see 12-year-old kids that weigh 300 pounds in our clinic, and it's really tragic what's going on. And so you try to think about how do you encourage kids to move around. And so a really cheap way to do that is to hand them a jump rope, particularly if they'll use it in the right way. And we sponsor this every year at DeVos Hall, together with the community integration group of the Convention Arena Authority. And we show up with 500 kids, 1,500 parents, and take over the thing for this jump rope competition. The cool thing was, as soon as they knew they were doing this at the end of the year, every recess they started doing jump rope, and they were training, they were getting ready for it. The talent is amazing. If you ever get a chance to stop by this, do, because some of these kids are just astounding. I mean, there was this young man, high school age guy, and he was literally jumping on one hand, while the jump rope is going around, and it's just really fun. And so all these kids there doing this work, again with Spectrum Health volunteers doing the timing and things, which I'm told, by the way, gets random sometimes because it's very hard to do because you're trying to click while these people are jumping. So they'll give extra if they like, if they see a kid making extra effort. I mentioned healthier communities. We talked about it a little bit. That was the $6 million commitment. That's where that came from. It means to have an impact in the community, and has, but it, of course, can only do that in collaboration with others. And those collaborations have been very solid. That Strong Beginnings program I talked about, and there are others. There's a core health program for older people, not babies, but people older than that, to talk about their health and what they need to do to succeed in life through their health care. So we do mean to help build healthier families, improve access to health care, and then connect community members and resources. It's very exciting work, and Dr. Ken Fawcett is now the leader of that group, and to the extent you want to get to know him or have a need to, let me know. It'd be a good place to connect. This is a program that Sarah has been involved with, in fact, helped put together the Food RX program, and so as people present to healthier communities with needs, they're in poverty or they have needs for better food, we've actually started this program, she actually started this program that gives them a prescription. So here's a $20 certificate so you can go buy food at one of the outdoor markets and those kind of farmers markets, those kind of things, to help not only them eat, but them eat well. And it's been exciting. Pilot, or have we moved beyond pilot? Yeah, first year pilot, so very exciting. Language services, just because I think it's cool, you may be surprised that we get presented with 90,000 requests annually for different languages to be spoken, and we've had some, just in the last year, it was 92 languages spoken in person because of that facilitation. It's really remarkable. And when you think about laying in a hospital bed and first of all being scared and not knowing exactly what's coming, to then not understand the language being spoken around you, would really be hard. Fred Wamgambi is a gentleman that runs this program. Fred's originally from Kenya, an incredibly wonderful human being that has actually started 2 nonprofits himself, one to help immigrants here, but the second is a micro investment group he uses where he'll help support primarily women in Kenya who are starting businesses. So he'll loan them a couple $100s so they can build something to carry goods home to home and sell them, and then he'll move to the next success once they've paid back that loan. So it's a very cool guy, great place, and again, an example of what can happen when a very large system like this is here local. Fred and his wife, both from Kenya, both here raising their 3 sons, and it's really very exciting to be around them. Veterans Explorers, I mentioned quickly. This is fun for me because I'm involved. It's in part, but I'm also very proud of it. And I did bring, by the way, a couple booklets. I didn't bring many because you all would have yelled at me if I used that much paper. But there are a couple here. This one's about the corporate social responsibility that we do. It's a little dated, but still interesting. And then this one's on the innovations group. Innovations basically is our tech transfer, as you might guess, when you have 1,300 physicians on staff and another 1,000 outside, and then 23,000 people all thinking, all trying to do their jobs better. They often come up with ideas that can be something substantial that can go beyond, in fact, their work. This one is great fun. Jason is a young man that has cerebral palsy. And with kids with cerebral palsy, one of the things that works is they'll do a bracing system where they move their muscles around. And the idea is to open up their muscles. It's something that kind of makes you close in on yourself. And if they open it up, they stand taller. They're more apt to look you in the eye when they're talking with you, but they also walk better, and it has a lot of positive impact, at least according to the folks that advocates of this methodology. The problem is the clothing and the braces and things you buy are custom made. They're very expensive. $1,500 was the pricing I saw on the cheapest. And your child's growing out of it quickly because of that. And they're also too warm. The moms were telling us, we do these spark sessions, and so we put together in a room a bunch of the moms of the kids, the therapists that are there, some engineers, some other folks, to talk about this problem. And the other problem was they wouldn't use them in the summer because it was too hot. So in this group, they came up with some ideas. We worked with Kendall, we worked with Ferris, we worked with some other, Wolverine Worldwide, these fabric experts, came up with this pair of shorts that look very much like Under Armour shorts, but they have some Velcro on the outside of it, and so you can actually manipulate the muscles with these special fabric shorts to act in the same way. It cost us $200 to do the prototype. You know, so even if there's not a market for this commercially, and there may not be, because thank God there aren't that many kids with CP, it's something we can do for our patients. And we can work with the kids that are here in Grand Rapids with that disease. So that's one example of 300 that we've heard this year. We've licensed, I think this says 4, I think we've licensed 7 products now to date. And they're very, very interesting things, and it's a lot of fun. And we've worked collaboratively. Grand Valley State University is a huge partner of ours. So in the old days, what the folks would do is they'd first protect the IP because, you know, gee, this might be $1 billion thing, so let's protect it, hold it tight. And we took the opposite approach. We said, now let's see if it's viable, if it makes sense. We drop them into a Masters of Engineering class here at Grand Valley. And they'll work through the project as a class project, and at the end of the year, you know whether or not you've got a viable project, and at that point, we'll protect the IP. Spectrum and Grand Valley share it with the inventor. I mean, it just works out a lot better, and we think we'll end up with more usable ideas. The beautiful thing about being in a system with 12 hospitals and 1,300 providers is that there are some things that may not be commercially viable, and yet we can use. And so even our own use justifies the use of, you know, the pushing of these ideas. The other thing it does, though, as again you would guess, is our staff, you know, because they have these ideas, they love the fact that somebody cares and is willing to take it on and push it forward. And so they love dealing with this engineering class or computer science class or whatever it might be. So it's been very successful in that regard. Research is another area I have some responsibility for. It's another area I wanted you to know about. We actually have a $20 million research enterprise at Spectrum, and we have some 700 studies that we do. We mean to do clinical studies that are important to our patients and that might in fact advance science so that people can get better. And some of this stuff is incredibly exciting. There's a new clinical study ongoing right now that comes out of the University of Oregon, and it's to cure West Nile virus. It's a vaccine for that disease. So those things are very exciting to deal with and work with. And we have more and more physicians now that we're hiring these subspecialties for the tertiary quaternary care we provide. They're not willing to take no at the clinical level. They don't want to stop when traditional science says, or traditional medicine says, you know, well, this is all you can do for this patient. They want to go back and find something else. And so they do in fact pursue those goals on our own, but also with Van Andel Institute, also with MSU's medical school, and with many others. We're just engaging in an agreement with Stanford for some heart work that are, thank you very much, sir, well, that Stefan Uvinga is pursuing. Stefan is a scientist we brought in together with the Van Andel Institute and the DeVos family, who does work on regeneration of cells in the heart. So when you have a heart attack, it means cells have died in part of your heart. In the past, everybody said, of course, that's the end of it. You can't regenerate that. In fact, you might have to replace that heart someday or just assume the inevitable. He's working on regenerating heart cells and has actually taken skin cells and ended up with beating heart cells in a plate. So it's very exciting work that's going on. I've quit calling him Frankenstein because he didn't like it. I'm not going to talk about sustainability, not a lot, mainly because Sarah has with this group, and frankly, she's the expert. And while I'm an executive, so I get to take credit for her work, I don't know it like she does. But I do want to touch on a couple things, I guess, just to talk about a bit. We do have a robust sustainability program. Is it enough? Well, no. You know, it's never enough, and there's much farther to go. But we're pretty excited about what we're doing to date, and so some of it is about. I wonder, do we have time for this? We don't. All right. Ask Sarah about it. We'll do it another time. But so we have 5 green roofs throughout the Spectrum Health facilities. As we build new facilities, we do more and more of that with a sedum on top of the roof, and tremendous to gather both the rainwater, but also to allow some cooling and those things, the benefits that it has. We believe we've saved over $750,000 in the last year through retrofits to better use electricity and other non-renewable energy resources. Our new designs, and this is the one on the Beltline, there's one in Holland like this. There'll be one on the lake shore sometime soon like this and in other places. Our new design, both inside and out, is really state-of-the-art. Inside, they're designed to create this integration of care I talked about, where when you go to visit a physician, if a question pops up for another one, likely that a doc in that specialty works down the hall, so the question can be asked, and if not, we're going to have people ready to answer those questions by phone. But outside, these things are created with meadows, with some green roofing, with the right lighting, with lights that go off automatically. Many of the things that you would encourage us to do and that we're very excited about. I did have the pleasure of being the Chief Administrative Officer at VAI when we built Phase 2, and I believe that ended up, where did we end up with that? Platinum, I think, on LEED there. But some of it gets silly, and we're not doing the silly. I'll give you an example. That has solar panels on the roof. Those solar panels have an 84-year payback. They have a life expectancy of maybe 20 years, you know. So at some point, you know, you may be doing it not for the right reason. Propane retrofit we've used on several of our buses and continue to do that. We move these people around a great deal and are looking at that. Food waste we're very focused on, and I've got the tonnage is astounding. So we know that about 40% of the food in the U.S. goes to waste. We're at 10 tons per month that we compost and are moving up in that direction. So is that my signal? The operating room is interesting because this blue wrap is over all everything obviously has to be very sterile and clean. So what do you do with a blue wrap? And we've started to recycle it, and it's a great recycling project that ends up creating pallets, the blue plastic pallets out of those. And I don't remember how many tons it has been. Do you remember?
70.
Like 70 tons a year of this wrap that we've been able to recycle. So pharmaceutical waste is an important issue. You want to avoid putting it in the water source. We've been doing that. And obviously there's more to be done. And we're very excited about the future because we're listening, we're trying to listen. We have Sarah who keeps us on point, and we really are working within our facilities and other areas to make certain that we treat the environment as carefully as we mean to treat our patients. So that's who we are, and I probably have talked too much. I have 5 minutes left for questions, so, and nobody interrupted me, please.
That's a very interesting talk. Very interesting and educational. Question I had about sustainability, have you ever computed your carbon footprint?
Oh, it's a great question. The question is, have we computed our carbon footprint? And we have not, and it's a great challenge for us.
I mean, it seems to be that's where you're starting.
Yeah. No, it's a great idea. It's a great idea, and then you have a baseline and start working from there. We did do this community, this corporate social responsibility booklet. We started doing some of those baselines on, so how much food do we source locally, et cetera. So we're trying to work through that, but you raise a really good point. I don't even know. We'll talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we measure our energy use, our water use, our waste. We don't go so far to measure the carbon footprint of that. So, I mean, we could do that.
Right.
Yeah, we measure a lot, but we just have to dump it in.
Did you all hear that? Yep. All right. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Steve, when having worked in the environmental area, we know that half the time we want to do something, we're going to have to call your old colleagues at Werner for advice. What are some of the big regulatory challenges you guys face? I mean, it's just exploded in the last 6-8 years. Yeah. And I'm just kind of curious, you know, that drives your business.
Sure.
Sure.
Sure. Do we have another hour? Do we have Governmental Affairs is one of the departments I have. Mark Lemoyne is kind of runs our lobbying efforts. And we're actually, the regulatory stuff we've generally treated within the, so the regulations related to the IRS are done by the tax people and the accounting people. And we're sort of starting to pull that together because frankly, regulations have become as political as law. And so we're viewing the need to lobby with respect to regulations in the same way that you lobby with respect to legislation. It's just a sad truth of today's work. But no, it's suffice it to say it's an amazing effort just to try to stay up on all the regulations, and we're never going to succeed. And the problem has become that making an error on some regulatory oversight has become criminal. You know, and suddenly in the public eye, you've done this great harm, when in fact you missed some technical statement in some regulation on page 3,000. But it's equally frustrating for us. Did you have a question too?
Well, I just had a statement. You need to maybe go back and look at your solar panel numbers.
Sure.
Because it is a very different world today. Even with nonprofits, there's all kinds of financing here. For-profit will take the tax rebates that you can't use, and really paybacks are, we're looking at 10 years.
Sure. No, I understand. And I didn't mean to condemn all solar panels. It was an interesting argument between Dave Van Andel and I, and you all ought to know he is incredibly committed. And if you get a chance, I had our folks do a drawing, and it does a side. It cuts off the side of the Van Andel Institute Phase 2 and shows all the environmentally friendly aspects of it. And it really is very exciting how that building was built. In fact, you ought to arrange a tour or something sometime because it's phenomenal. The wastewater recovery, everything, the sedum, all of it. I shouldn't have said, I shouldn't make fun of that, but it was funny to me at the time because I was like, what are you talking about?
It was probably a few years ago.
It was many years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. That was appropriate.
Yeah.
It just changed.
Sure. Right, thank you for that. Other thoughts, questions? We're done, huh?
Yeah.
Thanks, all right.
Token of our appreciation, we like to present speakers with,
Good, thank you.
locally brewed.
I do have a plant-based diet, so luckily beer is plant-based.
And we've got one for the spoke folks as well. You're gonna have to share. Thank you. Well, that's it for today. We got a lot of dates to remember for upcoming meetings, and hope to see you all at future ones. Thank you.